Why don't you talk to your once best friend anymore? Story 1. I slowly realized that she just wasn't a nice person. It was such a relief when I finally admitted to myself that I didn't need to waste any of my time around someone who barely thought of anyone but herself. Story 2. All he wants to do is play video games. When I try to make plans to do something like hiking or go to the beach, he backs out last second. He has a bad weight problem and has asked me to help, but he'll only follow my advice for 2 weeks before giving up. I told him to cut soda out of his diet, and a week later he sent me a Snapchat of him buying a 24-pack of Coke. He got a subscription to the same gym as me and has only shown up once. Whenever he invites me over, it ends up with me being bored while he plays games on his phone or plays League of Legends with his clan. I feel like a bad friend for not wanting to hang out with him anymore, but I feel like I lose a day of my life whenever we hang out. Story 3. He just stopped answering my calls. We started to drift apart after school ended. He went for life of academia, and I went for life of an alcoholic. I was emotionally somewhat abusive and toxic. He did the right thing for himself, and I respect him for it. Edit. Thank you for all the kind words, dear random internet people. Story 4. There's a multitude of reasons, but I think it boils down to we were proximity friends. We were friends all through middle and high school, but then college came, and we both just went our separate ways. It's not that we didn't try to keep it going. We're still friends and still occasionally get together for lunch, a movie, or just to go for a walk, but I don't think we will ever be best friends again. I don't think that's a bad thing. She's in a great relationship with a wonderful guy and has finally taken back control of her life from overbearing mother. I've moved from the college portion of my life to my professional path. I think that our paths were just destined to split. Story 5. We grew up together all the way to our 30s. I got married and had a child. He got married. We were each other's best man at our weddings. I got divorced. He cut off all communication with me immediately right after. I asked his wife what his deal is, and she told me he couldn't deal with seeing me at such a low. For real, I was going through the hardest time of my life. Friends are supposed to help each other out, right? For no reason, right? Because that is what friends do, a 30-year friendship gone. Story 6. He got in a relationship with a girl that was perfect for him, but once he got in that relationship, he abandoned all his friends and only talks to her and her friends. Story 7. His girlfriend was also a close friend of mine. When I caught him cheating on her, they were engaged. He pleaded with me not to tell her, even though he kept it up. Story 8. We used to go to the same church. She decided to stay in our hometown, get married young, have a lot of kids, and stay in the same church. I decided to go to a Christian college, which she thought was okay, as long as it meant that I was going to marry a pastor or something like that. But then she was upset when I later transferred to a secular university, and even more upset when I decided not to stay within our Christian denomination. We're actually still friends on Facebook, but she never responds to any messages I send her. I think the only reason she hasn't deleted me is because she wants to spy on me, which is okay with me. I've got nothing to hide. Truthfully, I hope that she has a long and happy life where she is. But if it ends up that she doesn't and her husband goes crazy or something and she reached out to me for help, it'd be a full day's drive, but I'd go get her and her kids pedal to the metal the whole way and bring them up to my place. I've got new friends now, and I wouldn't throw any of them under the bus just to help an old friend, but her and I went through some craziness together, and sometimes I wish we still talked. Story 9. She was in a relationship with a much older guy. I could be here all day if I gave details, but basically he was very emotionally and I also suspect physically and abusive. I eventually convinced her to leave him, which she did after multiple attempts. He harassed her for a while after they broke up, and then one day he just stopped. He never attempted to contact her again. She completely fell apart. Even though she knew he was a bad guy, she desperately wanted him to love her. She had been abused by a family member when she was younger, and I think she associated abuse with love. So when he stopped abusing her, in her mind, he had stopped loving her. She blamed me and cut me out of her life. She told me on my 20th birthday that she would get back together with him, and there was nothing I could do to stop her, and that's the last time we spoke. They never got back together, as far as I know. I hope she managed to get help with her issues and never ends up in a relationship like that again. I truly miss her and wish we were still friends, because we went through so much together. I love her like a sister, and I hope that one day she realizes that everything I did was because I couldn't stand to see her hurt. TLDR, she blamed me when her abusive boyfriend stopped contacting her. Story 10. We both started a relationship around the same time, and both kind of chose the guy over each other, which I regret. Went to message her on Facebook the other day, and she had deleted me. Welp. Story 11. She got cool. She plays bass in a successful rock band, has a bunch of piercings and tattoos, works at Rolling Stone, and hangs out with her musician and hipster friends now. I'm still a nerd. DD is the highlight of my week. I'm a filthy weeboo who watches more Crunchyroll than Netflix. The most expensive thing that I own is a snazzy dining room table that has a board gaming surface underneath. Basically, we grew apart, we're friends on Facebook, but we have so little in common now. that we really only have the past to talk about. Story 12, I went to visit him at his college about 2,500 miles away and ended up having a few times with a girl in his circle of friends. The next time he came home, he didn't call me or anything, and I ended up seeing him out one night with his new girlfriend from college, the girl I had with a few months before. I thought it was petty of him to no longer speak to me about it, since he was pretty much the one who set me up with her when I visited. The odd thing is I lost touch with him after we all moved on, and about 6 years later, he called me out of nowhere and asked me to be in his wedding different girl. We sort of patched things up, but it was never the same. I haven't seen or talked to him in about 10 years now. Story 13 convinced me to lie for him to cover his tracks when he cheated on his GF. I only agreed because he has a young daughter, and I didn't want her to grow up without a dad. After the fact, I realized he always took advantage of my kind-hearted nature and was never really my friend. I was just enabling him to be a shitty bottom feeder. I'm much happier now with him out of my life. It was all for the best. Story 14, let's see. First, she started dating a guy we had already told her was bad news, and we all had run-ins with in mind being stalker-y incidents. Then she got pregnant with his child halfway through her senior year. She gave birth that October after graduation. That didn't end up working out, and I'm not sure how it all happened exactly. But she ended up with minority custody, and he got majority. I got a call around Thanksgiving my freshman year of college. Her parents had kicked her out for more unknown reasons and was going to have to sleep in her car in the cold. I called my mom and made arrangements for her to stay there until she got back on her feet. The agreement was she could stay as long as she needed, as long as she helped my handicapped mom clean around the house and help pitch in money food. Big mistake. She was messy, refused to help around the house, would feign sleep to ignore my mom, let tubs and boxes of her take over weird places of the house, and took my emergency iPhone cords when she finally left. She had cops called at our house because she apparently threatened to hurt herself or something, and she was in jail over Christmas because she hit her baby daddy at their son's doctor's appointment, which she wasn't supposed to attend due to the father being present and them having a no contact order. We also caught her lying about going to strange guys' homes that she met online to watch Netflix. More and more risky behavior that the courts will hold over her. Sometime in January, she got an apartment with another childhood friend, and it took weeks of bugging her before she would take her stuff she had stored at our house. After a couple months, she tried to tell me our other friend was hosting weird parties and developing a drinking habit, and when I tried to get to the bottom of it, everything came out. She was bringing random creeps to the apartment, then later started hooking up with the baby daddy again, despite the NCO still being in effect. She wasn't putting in her share of housework, and she had the cops called on her at a Buffalo Wild Wings or something like that for freaking out. The other friend told their landlord, and the crazy friend was forced to move to the opposite end of the complex. They were separated by the time summer started. It's been over a year and a half since the end of that, and I'm pretty sure my mom still gets court stuff for her in the mail. Edit for reference. She was literally my first friend in school ever. We met before the first day of kindergarten on the bus. We were like sisters. Story 15, I have known him for 8 years, and over the last 3, he has become a hopeless alcoholic. He drinks on average 5 5/5 a week, and I almost never see him sober. Also, yes, his friends, including me, have intervened to no avail, and his family, including his sister who flew up from Chile, have intervened again to no avail. Story 16, he died almost 2 years ago in a car accident. The day is still burned into my memory. I couldn't process it at the time. My mind just rejected the notion outright. He was my best friend since middle school. I loved him like a brother. Story 17, she started hanging out with a wrong group of people. They're not criminals or anything, but she fell hard into the cosplay community with a shitton of drama and are just really superficial about appearances. Now all she does all day is look and act cute. I guess she's relatively popular, though. She has a FB page where she complains about life and looks for validation. There's always a horde of fans ready to comment and stroke her ego, and as a result, she has no idea how to deal with a reality where strangers aren't tripping over themselves to help and praise her. Hanging out with her is such a pain now. It's like my best friend is gone. She skips around making cute little anime Ugamo noises and is always posing and acting cute. Sometimes I just want to slap her and tell her she's 28. Will you knock it off already? Your life is a train wreck. Get it together, and at least you'll still have something to salvage out of it when you're too old for this and your fans move on to the next young, cute girl to freak out over. Story 18, because my social anxiety makes me lazy in regards to talking to people. If someone doesn't make plans for me to be somewhere and going home and playing games, I hate it, but also can't be bothered to do anything about it most of the time. Story 19, we used to be neighbors growing up and had a great friendship until I heard about him raping a girl while away at college. Honestly, I wasn't too surprised he did it. He had a horrible drinking problem and fancied himself quite a ladies' man. When I heard the disgusting details, I cut off all contact. Story 21 died. One raided my partner's panty drawer. One became a crazy alcoholic. One got married, and I moved. Not because he got married. Now I have acquaintances because it's easier to get over it. Story 21. We just became so different. I was maybe 15 the last time we really hung out. She was very straight-laced. Things started changing when I started partying, and she stayed very focused on her studies. I miss her, though. At this point, we're so different, I'm not sure we would even really like each other that much if we hung out now. Story 22. My once best friend is still my best friend. There isn't much time to be best friends right now because our friendship is not measured by the daily conversations we have, but by the single conversation that has lasted 30 years and will continue to last. Even after one of us has died, life happens. There is to do things that require our time and attention, situations that may not be ideal, but we deal with because it's important, but whether it be a day, a month, a year, or years, when we do talk, that conversation continues as if we've never stopped. Our friendship is less about catching up and more about just being together and enjoying the memories we've made and the ones we're making. Story 23. When his girlfriend broke up with him, he began sending subtle hints that he wanted us to be friends with benefits, but that a relationship would never be in the cards. When I didn't agree to it, it became obvious that our whole friendship had been about the excitement of what if. Once that question was answered in real life, the friendship was basically on life support. The nail in the coffin was when he showed up super late to hang out with me, leaving me sitting alone at a restaurant for over 30 minutes. Then spun it so I was the villain for being upset that he had been late. That was the last time I saw him. Story 24. Religion. We didn't talk about it for a long time, and then for her birthday one year, her mom thought it would be smart to invite my friend's Baptist buddies to the sleepover. These girls stayed up until 2 a.m. singing religious songs, and I tried to sleep by drowning them out with Tool. I think the rift was formed that night. Story 25. Met online when we were 13, 14. Friend for almost 10 years. Video games kept us close as we were worlds apart. Met a few times IRL, and she was pretty chill. We texted one another more than I care to actually admit to. We're best of friends even during all of our relationships. Didn't really care for romantic relationship until our mid-20s. Joined a new guild, and eventually she found someone who piqued her interest. Still didn't care. I enjoyed the friendship, ton of common interests. They spent pretty much every second with one another. Was completely cut out. When I wasn't able to be online at specific times, when he wasn't online, I was the bad guy that didn't want to be friends anymore. 10-year friendship down the drain over not being able to log in at 3 a.m. to play games. Been a few years now, but I do miss her, but not going to become the third wheel to her relationship. Sucks. And I feel like I wasted a lot of time hitting play proves it, but that's life. Still don't have a best friend I can really talk to. Feel like I'm past that age now, but it is what it is. Story 26. It started with him becoming a Trump supporter, which was fine. I have friends of all different political persuasions, and we regularly debate on Facebook. But his defense of Trump kept becoming more insulting and belligerent, accused everyone of ignorance for believing mainstream media lies about Trump. And then he began an anti-Muslim crusade, constantly arguing about how dangerous Muslims were, arguing for their genocide, praising Saddam Hussein and Durut for killing Muslims. Just toxic, terrible stuff. I got tired of debating with him. He never listened to anything people said or defended his ideas, just insulted everyone who disagreed. I realized my debates with him were just strengthening his resolve and providing a negative effect in my life. So I told him why I was unfollowing him, and that if he ever wanted to have a civilized discussion, he was welcome to message me. It's been 5 months. He hasn't. Story 27. She cheated on her boyfriend, who was also one of my closest friends, and then tried to tell everyone that the guy she cheated with raped her once she worried that people would find out. Then she tried to my cousin. Story 28. My once best friend blew off my very small, family-only wedding because he was tired and wanted to go to bed early. My wedding was less than 5 miles from his house at 6 p.m., and he had known about it for 3 months. Story 29. T was my best friend ever. She was the only person I ever felt real friend love with, like the kind of love you feel for a partner, but platonic. We met working in Wendy's as teens and dabbled in marijuana and such together. I graduated a year before her, and the summer after my graduation, she just spiraled out of control. All of a sudden, she was snorting ground-up caffeine pills, and then heroin. Where the did she get heroin? She had gotten deeper into a crowd of bad kids we hung out with while I had realized they were in trash, and had pulled back. Somehow, by the end of the summer, she was so mentally, and these people has poisoned her mind against me so badly that she threw a brick through the rear view window of my car within days of leaving for college. Broke my heart right along with the window, and cost me a fortune I didn't have, wiping through my savings right before I went to school. She went on to spiral deeper into drugs, now has 3 kids by 2 men, and is with neither, and lives in relative poverty, still working cashier kind of job as far as I can tell from Facebook. Once on a live journal entry, she had written about me as teens, saying she hated me for a million reasons, but though I did go further in life than her. She had already quit then. It broke my heart and still does. We were both kids from disadvantaged families, and somehow I got out and she didn't. Story 30, probably one of the more petty reasons in my opinion. But here it goes. Frank and I were inseparable from kindergarten to 7th grade. We were in all the same classes and would hang out almost every day after school, until Frank's grandparents decided that they were Gucci to pay for him to go to a private school. Needless to say, the two of us were upset about it, but knew we were going to stay friends. We were able to keep our best friend status going for a year longer, but we both were finding new friends. Now the good part, every year for his birthday, Frank and I would go out to his grandfather's house, who had an old caboose on his property. We would crash in this caboose and play video games all night. Well, this year Frank decided he was going to also invite some of his private school buddies with us. Frank was ecstatic I agreed to go, but from that point on our hangouts became more like training sessions. We would play the same video game for hours and hours, so he could coach me how to do better. He would talk to me about things to say to the others, and anything else he could think of to make me look better to them. I eventually got sick of this and told him something along the lines of, "Are you trying to change me to be more like your private school friends?" His response was defensive, but he didn't deny it, and we ended up arguing about it until he kicked me out of his house in anger. I couldn't let that go, so I stopped talking to him altogether. A few years later, his grandparents' private school fund ran out, and he ended up coming to my high school, but we never really talked again. Story 31, old childhood friend. She always complained that we never hung out. Every time we hung out, she complained to my family when she saw them when she was working as a cashier, but she didn't respond to my texts. And eventually she unfriended me on Facebook. I reached out to her one more time, and she didn't respond. It baffles me, but I'm okay with it. Story 32. I hung around with the same 3 or 4 guys from the end of grade school all the way through college, and then some. Pretty much all of them were my best friend at one point or another, but as to why things fizzled out, well, that's simple. We got older, and as we got older, our relationships changed. Part of that had to do with girlfriends. Each time one was added and removed from the group, it inevitably altered the dynamics of our friendships. There was cheating, some people couldn't get along with others, and sooner or later everyone was fighting. But it's not fair to just blame relationships. Education played a part too. Some of us went to college, and others didn't. That led to new friends and new social circles. Add careers to the mix, and marriages and children and divorces and funerals, and before you know it, you haven't spoken to your friends in the better part of a decade. And when you do finally get together again, you realize that nothing is the same anymore, not even you. Your friendship exists only as a memory. Story 33, this will likely get lost being so late to the party. I had 2 best friends in school. We'll call them Max and Don, who had been friends since the 8th grade. We were inseparable. If you saw one of us, one or both of the others were never far behind. Fast forward to after high school, and we all 3 stayed in touch as much as possible. Max stayed living in our hometown, and I only moved a few miles away. Don moved away after joining the military, but both Max and I would write or call him when we could. Don moved back to our hometown after a few years, and it was like none of us had ever been apart. One day about 4 years ago, I'm at work, and I see there's been a wreck on one of those news info FB pages the news stations use. I think to myself, man, that car looks familiar, but I just couldn't quite place it. So I moved on and kept working. I got home around 6 p.m., and my phone rang. It was Don's number. I answered with, "Hey, what's up, dickhead?" Silence. Then his younger brother starts trying to speak, but mostly cries. And as soon as I hear this, I knew the car I saw on FB was Don's. He finally tells me that he had a head-on collision with a semi that was hauling a mobile home. He was on the way to his kid's birthday party. It was some of the saddest I've been through in my life. I was stunned and just didn't have any words and cried on the phone with his brother. I called Max as soon as we hung up and could regain my composure. I told him and cried all over again. Max and I still hang out sometimes, fishing, riding motorcycles, etc., and text almost daily. We've been friends for about 25 years now. We both miss Don and talk to him often. He was a crazy mother and loads of fun to be around. He had no filter and said the most inappropriate all the time, but we loved him like a brother. Story 34. I dated his ex not too long after they broke up. Real move for me. I know, we thought we were in love, etc. After that, he stopped hanging around with our group of friends, fell in with another crowd. He didn't go to university, and a lot of our group did, so we didn't really see him for a long time. I was with this girl for about 3.5 years. We broke up, but reconnected for another 6 months or so after the death of my dad before she broke my heart again. Guess I got what I deserved. The thing that really got me is I spoke to her a lot later, and we both admitted we regretted the way we got together. Personally, I massively regret not just that we got together, but that I ever let myself put a girl before my best friend. Fortunately, my former best friend and I do meet up occasionally, though our relationship has never been the same since. Story 35. Well, it's been 20 years. He's a raging Republican, lives abroad, and apparently has screwed over everyone close to him, numerous divorces and abandonment-type behavior. It seems he's just another now, but once upon a time I would have taken a bullet, man. Growing up sucks. Story 36. She was a negative person and took everything I said to her as criticism. I couldn't handle it and stopped talking to her. Sometimes I think about reaching out to see how she's doing, but I don't. I hope she finds happiness in her life, but it won't be through me. Story 37. Apparently, I am the only one who could use a phone because she never called me and then got married but never told me how to find out via Facebook. Same with another friend. As long as I invited her to do things, it was accepted but not reciprocated. Story 38. Donald Trump won, and she went on a tirade rant about how sheltered and naive she thinks I am for saying his election isn't going to actually change your life entirely. I meant you're still going to go to work every day and date and live a life. In her mind, the world was ending and society was 100 different. Her anger towards me for not agreeing with her made me back off a little, and I still talk to her, but not as often. It had also been my birthday, and I was dealing with harassment at work, and she also dismissed that because I like attention from men. She was mad because a guy I was seeing bought me plane tickets to visit my sister in another state, and she feels like I always get my way. She wants a guy who does things like that, and to her I'm unappreciative about it. Her anger was uncalled for, though, and it sucked to lose a best friend in that way. Story 39. He started dating a vicious. We could still be friends. He moved her into our apartment. We could still be friends. He let her treat me and everyone else like we could still be friends. He defended her instead of us. We can't be friends. Story 40. She felt really betrayed after we were both nominated for backs captain of a rugby team. And I didn't turn down the nomination. She won the election, kept it civil for the rest of the year. But after graduating, we haven't spoken. Pretty enlightening figuring out 3 years of doing everything together has nothing on good old-fashioned competitiveness. Story 41. I had a best friend through high school, and into a few years afterwards, I purposely began to pull back after a while. Every once in a great while, we'll talk on the phone for an hour or so. And by the time the call is over, I fully remember why. He never grew up, still shooting from the hip and not thinking through actions. Everything is always someone else's fault. I could empathize and actually appreciate it when I was young. It's just grating now. We're better off acquiescence as acquaintances now. Edit there. I fixed that word. You people a little. Story 42. Shed tell me her problems, and ID listen and try and help out. But when I tried talking to her, ID get short, uncaring responses. So I said this and just drifted away over time. Story 43. I had finally realized that just because we've been friends for 20 years doesn't mean we need to continue to be, as if the rampant lies, manipulation of his family members, and compounding drug abuse weren't enough. He decided to abandon an important commitment he made, affecting the lives of others, and I simply grew tired of sustaining his lies to save the perspective others had of him. I wish him the best, but you can't help someone who doesn't want help. Story 44. Still consider my best friend. We're just into our lives now. He has a family, lives far away. I have my career and my life. I drunk dial him a few times and had a good chat. We also had a small reunion earlier this year with him, his family, and some other friends. Met up for the first time in 3 or 4 years. It felt like the next day. Story 45. Long story. Still makes me sad. I'm a classically trained musician in my 30s. Started a band with my best friend. Thought of him as a brother. He was going through a tough time in life. So I let him sleep on my couch after practices, bought him meals, paid for his gas to travel to practice. We were musicians after all. Even bought him bags of groceries when we thought he was going hungry. We talked about our private lives, shared bro stories that we never told anyone else, etc. I wrote all of the band songs and lyrics. I recorded, mixed, and mastered the album myself. I set up the website and promotional accounts. The only thing I had him do was record bass guitar over the electronic tracks to add a live feel. It didn't really work well, and I spent hours of my spare time mixing and editing to make him sound as good as possible. One day, he started getting negative about my decisions, criticizing my choices for album art, and simply saying no to ideas without any reason or discussion. This, to me, seemed to come out of nowhere. He seemed more and more upset as time went on, but I pushed forward with the project. It had been years of work, and we were so close to releasing the album. After a particularly bad day, I decided we had to talk about his negativity. I had him over for a chat, and we ended up arguing over his ability to veto things. Essentially, when it came down to it, I wasn't okay with him outright, saying no without a discussion. This project was my baby, my future, my life every day for 5 years of work. I was going to stand up for myself. I told him how I felt. No yelling or raised voices. We both just talked. After he was told he couldn't simply veto things, he got up, walked out, told me to erase everything Head recorded, and threatened to sue me if I used it. Just like that, I followed him to the street saying that he was making a mistake, that we were brothers, etc. He ignored me and left. I was shocked. When he got home, he then proceeded to burn every connection between us: Facebook, phone numbers, Xbox friends, etc. He then wrote me a letter saying that he would hire a lawyer if I used any of his bass, which sucked anyway. Keep in mind, this was a new, unmarketed band. No money, no albums, no fans, nothing of value from a legal perspective. In the letter, he also reluctantly thanked my girlfriend for her generosity, never mentioning the thousands of dollars I'd spent giving him over the years. When I wrote back and said that I would remove his bass recordings, he replied, "Then our business is concluded." And that was it, done. My girlfriend had known him for years and cried at his behavior. Seeing her upset made me angry. At that moment, I went from being shocked hurt to livid. Additionally, I was up mentally about the music after that. It really affected me to know that my pursuit of a dream had somehow led to the loss of my best friend. The tracks just didn't inspire me anymore. I never released the album in its full capacity. Nobody has ever heard my most prized lives work, and I have had very little passion for writing since then. This coward had ruined everything and pulled the rug out from under my music career just because he was too much of it to settle an argument with his best friend in the world. We could have talked it out easily. I love the guy. It's been a few years and my anger has cooled a bit, but I'm still up musically, and I can't seem to shake the underlying sadness that I have about all of this. I've gone over it in my head 1,000 times, and I own up to everything that I did to cause the argument. But this guy burned down a 10-year relationship without even bothering to have the conversation. Coward. If you're out there, G, you up the people who cared about you most. Story 46, he only messages me when he needs something. Hey, long time, no speak. Remember XYZ that one time 10 years ago? Anyways, I was wondering if you could help me with something. I stopped answering when he tried to get me into a pyramid scheme. Story 47, I was supposed to be babysitting her kids while she went on a date, but she didn't come back for 2 days because the guy wanted to take her to the beach. Story 48, he's marrying a harpy. I hate his girl. They're engaged to get hitched, and she didn't invite me to his going-away party when he was leaving to work overseas for a while. Clara, his girlfriend, told me she wanted to lose her virginity to me. I told her no, and that was up, and informed my buddy what she said. Apparently, his girl spun the story differently to him, and he completely stopped talking to me. They broke up a few months later, but he was too proud to come back from that. I didn't even care for an apology. I just felt that he would come back around and didn't want to push him while he was healing. This was about 15 years ago, and we have not talked since. Story 49, my current best friend, is also the woman I love, and I talk to her every day. I plan to be with her until I perish. However, I lost contact with my last male friend when he took rent money from me and the other roommates, said he paid the rent, and then accepted a transfer from work to another state and took all that money with him, leaving us thinking rent had been paid right up until we got the eviction notice. He never said a word about it and stopped communicating after his transfer, so he stole from us, abandoned us, and wasn't there for me when I was trying to break away from a bad marriage. In fact, he took advantage of me when I needed his help. The murkier details are too convoluted to describe, but his choices resulted in me suffering for another decade or so before finally improving my situation. I do not make friends with guys anymore. Women are easier to get along with anyway. Story 50, I stopped smoking pot and drinking. He didn't. I'm gainfully employed with a family and a house. He's going back to prison on his 3 OWI charge and second hit and run. Story 51, his wife was a horrible person. She went out of her way to just completely devastate people every time we got together, for instance, and this is just one of many. She gave pregnancy tips to one guy's wife who had had a hysterectomy because of cysts. My friend confirmed that she was aware of this. She just liked destroying people. I told my friend that he was welcome to come to places with us alone, but that she wasn't welcome since he wasn't willing to do that. We cut off all contact with him. Our friend group just couldn't tolerate that kind of behavior.